Okay, bye. Hello and welcome. This town is quite close to my home and I've come to meet my friend Juliet here. Try and guess where we are. And I'll give you a clue to where we are. This town is on the River Wye. And it's a town with an amazing history. And it's 1,000 feet above sea level. And I guarantee with every step there's a story waiting to be told. And have you guessed where we are yet? This is Buxton in Derbyshire.
And just 1 mile from here, we'll be completely off the beaten track.
And how was the trip?
Oh, it was very good. But I'm so looking forward to this walk. I can't wait to get going and get onto those footpaths.
I'll be there soon. It'll be bright sunshine.
Oh, I hope it will.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have to put up with you in your shorts again, am I?
The spa town of Buxton is right at the heart of Derbyshire's Peak District, and it's where our walk starts and finishes. I suppose when you think of Buxton, one of the things is its famous Buxton water.
Well, we're standing here by St Anne's Well. This water feels so lovely and warm.
It's gorgeous.
It comes out of the ground at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, you know. And unbelievably, it fell as rain on the nearby hills 5,000 years ago.
It tastes fresh now, doesn't it?
It does.
That's incredible. I'll just take some for the journey, shall we?
I don't think that little flask is going to last very long.
Oh, it's nice and warm. This is the Old Hall Hotel. It's possibly the oldest hotel in England, and Mary Queen of Scots stayed here for a while she was a house prisoner under Queen Elizabeth I. They have a fantastic wine bar here, which I'm sure she frequented.
This circular walk is just over 30 miles long, so it is best walked over 3 days to really enjoy the landscape. It's quite challenging and you have to be well prepared, know how to read a map and be confident that you can walk a long distance in a day. The high moorlands of Axe Edge and Morridge are particularly exposed to the elements. But this walk is one of contrasts. And there are green sheltered valleys and pretty villages with tea shops, pubs and accommodation. We're leaving Buxton now, and Buxton's the highest town in Britain. It's actually surrounded by the Peak District National Park, which was created in 1951. We're leaving the town of Buxton behind us now, and we're beginning our first climb onto the moors of Axe Edge. And it looks pretty exposed up there to me.
Yes, it does, and just about now we've got no mobile signal, so you're very much on your own if anything should go wrong. So it's really important you're well prepared. Make sure you've got a compass or a GPS device and a map.
Yeah, and the map you need for this area is the outdoor leisure map. It's the White Peak map, number 24, at a scale of 2.5 inches to the mile. You also need good gear with you, nice waterproof coat, waterproof trousers which you carry in your rucksack, good boots, hat, gloves, spare jumper, plenty of food and drink, and a first aid kit.
Absolutely. But most importantly, tell somebody where you're going and what time you're expected, and you'll really enjoy the walk.
It's looking very wild up here today, isn't it?
I think the weather's looking a bit uncertain over there.
I wouldn't like to be living up here, you know, like some of these sheep have to.
They're what they call hefted stock. They live on their own bit of the moor, and they pass their knowledge down from one generation to the next, don't they? Do you want to come this way?
So you mean the lambs are born to the mothers who were born here? Grandmothers were born here as well?
That's right. I mean, the sheep can perish really easily up here, and just like we can if we're not careful. I should have known it. As soon as I mentioned the weather, it covered us in blanket fog. So we decided to take a break. And it doesn't take much for Juliet to get on the subject of geology.
Did you know that the limestone in central Derbyshire is 2 miles thick or deep in places? That's one interesting fact, but we're not on limestone here.
What is it here?
We're sitting on millstone grit, and this was famous, this area, because it's got a lot of coal mines in this area, which also helped with the Industrial Revolution.
How did the coal get into the rocks?
Well, that's quite a long story.
Have you got a short one?
I can demonstrate with this snack that I'm about to eat, if you don't. Would you like to watch?
Yeah, lovely.
Using a wrap.
Lovely.
This is the bottom layer of rock, that's the oldest. I'm going to put some cheese in the middle of the wrap now, because this is the limestone in the central Peak District. Then there was another layer of rock on top, and then an awful lot of plants grew. This was when we were on the equator, and it was a huge Amazon Delta-like environment with tropical ferns and all sorts.
We were on the equator here?
We were, yeah. Layers and layers of rocks were built up on top of the Amazon Delta, and it was all compressed and flattened, and that's what forms the coal. As we were pushed north to where we are today, the rocks were really screwed up and made into mountains, and the Peak District actually is a mound like this. And of course there's been a lot of erosion and land wearing away, so if you just cut with your knife across here, I can demonstrate the coal measures in a band around the middle of the Peak District. So cut across horizontally for me.
Is that it?
Yep.
Right. Oh, wow.
You see, in the middle here, the white cheese, that represents the limestone in the middle of the Peak District. And around the edge, you get the millstone grit and the coal measures, which are the green bits. I think these look a little bit better than your squash sandwiches.
But not so geologically sound, I feel.
After the wild moorland of Axe Edge, the sheltered valley at Three Shires Head allows us to relax and rest. Here, two valleys meet, and the River Dane swells from a stream into a small river. We're standing on a packhorse bridge at Three Shires Head, and it's the most scenic spot you can imagine. And it's called Three Shires Head because we're actually on the boundary of 3 counties. We've got Derbyshire behind us and to our left. To the right we've got Cheshire, and in front of us we've got Staffordshire. And in between these counties runs the beautiful River Dane.
In medieval times it would have been the spaghetti junction of its time here, because Cheshire would be exporting salt, Derbyshire would be exporting ore and wool, and Staffordshire would be exporting pottery. And they must have all met here, these people.
And all come across this bridge?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I think so. But before this bridge came in, there was a small bridge, and before that was a ford. When the small bridge was in, there was a story of a pack-horse train going across here, all tied together. One of the horses fell in, and of course it pulled all the other horses in as well, and several of the horses drowned. It must have been a right debacle, I think, yeah. I think it's called Panniers Pool, I think, down there, isn't it?
Should we go for a drink?
Yeah. The nearest village to Three Shires Head is Flash, and it was described in 1820 as the very end of the civilised world. It's the highest village in England at 1,500 feet. It was once the hideaway of counterfeiters, and that's where we get the term flash money from. There were many rough characters to match this wild and rugged landscape. It's said about the men that inhabited this area that they had barbarous manners, brutal pastimes, and also they were as uncouth as the countryside around them. And these hillsides were also famed for men coming here to have bare-knuckle fights. It's all got a bit easy-going bare-knuckle fighting in 1743 when they decided that it wasn't quite British to kick a man when he was on the ground. In the summertime, of course, these pools are full of children paddling because it's always so warm here. Sorry, did I splash you, Juliet?
Look, these signs are very interesting.
Yeah.
This brown waymark with a walking man on it means that you're entering access land and you can literally walk anywhere. The sign on the other side of the post is a brown man with a cross through him, which might suggest that you can't walk anywhere.
Yeah, people get confused, don't they?
Yeah, they think they can't go anywhere at all.
And that side you've got to stay to the public footpath, and this side you can walk anywhere.
Yeah, and this is a public bridleway we're walking on, so
Oh,
you
right.
can cycle or horse ride on it too. The route follows the river down to Gradbach, which was once a mill powered by the river. In the 18th century, there was quite a community here. Now there are new people coming and going every day because it's a popular youth hostel. Did you ever stay at this youth hostel, Ian, when you were young?
I still am young.
I've got the map out, you know. We'll have a look where we're going now. Do you want to see where we are?
Yeah.
We're just here now, just about to go over the footbridge down there. And then we go up through the wood. It's a steep climb up
Oh yeah.
to Lud's Church.
Okay.
Oh, look! In that oak tree up there, look, the woodpeckers have been at
Yes,
it.
they've been busy, haven't they?
Yeah. Do you think they're nesting now?
A bit early, I think. Yet. I've heard them around you.
Yes,
I've heard them
yes. I've heard the green woodpeckers doing its laughing call.
Yes, we're just walking through this lovely mixed woodland, very steep-sided, and we've got a little surprise for you. We're going to take you to church. This wondrous chasm, it's Lud's Church. It's about 50 foot deep and about 300 or 400 yards long. And it's linked to lots of stories. It was a meeting place, they think, of Robin Hood and his merry men. But it's also linked to a complex medieval poem by an unknown author. It was 2,530 lines long, called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Very easy to remember.
This secret atmospheric place was actually used as a church in the 14th century by a group of people known as the Lollards, and they believed that religious power came from being pious and that a pious layman could perform religious rites. The leader of the church at that time was a John Wycliffe, and he actually undertook to translate many of the Gospels of the Bible from Latin into English for the very first time.
Needless to say, that upset the Catholic Church and the state quite severely. So that's why the Lollards used to come here and meet in secret. I find it incredulous that at the age of 60, John Wycliffe, he died of natural causes in his own church. He had a stroke and he was taken home, and 3 days later he died. They say there's the image of a green man's face somewhere in this chasm, and I can't find it.
This walk is one of contrasts, and none more so as experienced on leaving the secret green chasm of Lud's Church, hidden in primeval birch woodland, and climbing out onto the southern end of the Roaches Ridge. Here the views are in all directions across our precious countryside, and the experience is even more stunning when there's a spectacular sunset. Just 2 days after we were filming on the Roaches, somebody took a picture of a wallaby they'd seen near Gradbach Youth Hostel. In the 1930s, 5 wallabies escaped from a private zoo, and they bred, and the herd numbered about 50 at one time. But I think this is probably the last, and it must be a bit lonely up here on its own.
Have a seat, Juliet, while we're here.
Thank you.
It's rather windy, this spot, and it's what a wonderful view off the Roaches estate that's run by the Peak Park. And this seat here was carved in 1872 for the visit of Prince and Princess of Teck. I'm going to ask the Peak Park, Juliet, if they let us carve one round the corner, especially for you.
I don't think they will.
I don't either. Off we go.
Hello.
Hiya.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Really busy up here today. Loads of people around.
I think it's just such a popular crag, it really is nice to climb on the gritstone.
Are you a climber, are you?
It is.
Are you a climber?
Yeah, George is a little climber.
You're a George, are you? Oh, that's good.
George.
Yeah, it's a fairly busy crag, this, to be honest. It's
Yes.
popular. People come from miles around to climb here. I've met people from London, climbing here.
Really?
So, yeah, popular spot.
They've got lovely names, haven't they, these? They call
Yeah.
them routes, don't they?
Yeah. This one round the corner is called Valkyrie, which I think is a lovely name. It conjures up all sorts of images. But they just come out for a bit of an afternoon's potter on the rock and see what we can get under our belt.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, we'll get on.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
In this area, legends abound. Hardly surprising with a pub named the Mermaid, surrounded by moorland. It's a sort of place that if there wasn't a legend here, you'd have to invent one.
We're standing by a trig point, and trig points like this are sadly disappearing from the British Isles now because they've been superseded by the digital revolution and everybody's got a GPS.
These trig points were put in by the Ordnance Survey, and the Ordnance Survey was founded in 1791 when Britain was worried that the French Revolution was going to sweep across the Channel, and we were very poorly mapped.
And then in 1935, Major General Malcolm MacLeod undertook the re-triangulation of the British Isles. That meant really he remapped the whole of the British Isles, and to do that they built 6,000 of these things in the most inaccessible places you can imagine, the high mountains of Scotland and Wales, all over the UK. And after each trig point was built, the Major treated his men to a picnic with a huge plum pudding.
A picnic? That sounds a bit twee, really. Well, I've got a surprise for you anyway. I've got a huge plum pudding as well. There we are.
It is absolutely
And
huge.
it's amazing, and I think we should drink to the Major.
Oh, that's
with a little
lovely.
bit of brandy. There we are. One for you.
Thank you.
Right, here's to the Major.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, Major.
We're sitting by Blackmere or Blakemere, and it's just past the Mermaid Inn and the Trig Point. And it's a dark peaty pond on top of the moors, and it's got a very murderous past.
In medieval times, a certain Joshua Linnet jeered and laughed as a local beauty was thrown into this pond to drown, because it was he that had organised the witch hunts. Incredibly, the 1735 Witchcraft Act wasn't repealed until 1951, but it wasn't actually certain whether the girl was a witch or not. But as she lay flailing and drowning in this pool, she leant up and she cursed Joshua Linnet, and that she said she would drag him down to its murky depths. 3 days later, Joshua was found face down in this pool, his face torn as if by talons.
Even today, birds won't drink from the pond and they won't fly over it. And it's even said that travellers, unwary, can be caught and dragged down into the pond's bottomless depths.
It's really windy up here though, isn't it, on this top of this cliff here?
I've got my wind measuring device here in my pocket. Should we get it out?
Yeah, see how windy it is.
10 knots. Anyway, it's so windy, let's get going because I'm getting cold. We're just entering the historic stone village of Longner, and it's at the end of a long walk. And I'm looking forward to a cup of tea.
The tea room's right in the town centre. Longner sits high on the Staffordshire moorlands, close to the Derbyshire border, and it has an old world ambience about it. It's a tiny village, but it must be the envy of many other small villages, as it's got 4 pubs, 2 tea shops, a fish and chip shop, a general store and a post office and a shop. And in 1977, it became a conservation village. Now, wherever you turn on our islands there's a story. This is St Bartholomew's Church. Now, it holds the grave of a William Billings who was born in a cornfield just about 150 yards from where we are now. It's probably a very badly planned walk it happened on. And William Billings saw action at the Battle of Gibraltar, also in the Battle of Ramillies, and against the Stuarts in 1715 and 1745. I can tell I'm boring you. But he died at the age of 112, 150 yards from where he was born. Now, isn't that amazing?
I've never heard of the Battle of Ramillies.
I think I made that bit up. I couldn't find his grave though, I had to look everywhere.
Leaving the historic market town of Longner, we drop down to cross the River Dove. At this point, the geology changes dramatically, and you can feel the change underfoot. Gone is the squelchy mud, and it's replaced by much drier, wildflower-rich grassland, at its most wonderful in the soft, warm light of early summer.
The River Dove, is it?
Yep, we've just crossed the River Dove, and I'm so excited because look, for the first time we can see limestone ahead of us now. The limestone cliffs and the limestone walls.
Depends how exciting your life is really, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's exciting.
No, it is lovely. It's interesting how the landscape's changed so quickly, hasn't it, coming over that hill?
And over there, look, Crome Hill. Do you see that very strange, sharp ridge of a hill? That's different because that's made of reef limestone and it's harder limestone. Come on now, I've done enough looking at the view. Let's go.
I'm getting cold, yes.
This is a typical drover's road, isn't it? Don't you think? Really wide and broad.
Yes, it is. When you consider they must have had quite large herds of cattle and flocks of sheep coming up here. They probably moved them along so that they didn't get too muddy in one place. They could walk on the other side of it for a while.
Yes.
It was also a pack horse route, wasn't it? And they had huge teams of pack horses consisting of horses, mules and donkeys.
You were telling me you'd seen them
Yeah.
when you went to the Himalayas.
That's right. There were huge trains and they had bells on. You could hear them coming in the distance. The lovely
what a
bells on the harness. It's
Lovely
beautiful.
sound.
But the thing was, if you were on a very steep mountain path, you had to really stand in like this because there were yaks often carrying the goods and they had great big packs on them full of sacks and they wouldn't stop, they'd go rushing past.
Really?
Really scary.
Well, it must have happened here in the olden days, mustn't it? A similar sort of
I
thing.
think so, but probably not with yaks.
No, it wouldn't have been with yaks. But they used to work really hard, these guys moving these trains. They were called jaggers. And they'd work from dawn till dusk moving these animals. And then at night they'd have to bed them all down again. It was a terribly hard life,
It's
wasn't
hard
it?
enough
Brutal.
to bed one
It was
horse
brutal.
down, never
Yes.
mind 50.
Yes.
Ash trees are really common in limestone country, aren't they?
They are, yeah. I made pickle once out of the keys. It was really appalling.
So I won't bother trying that.
No. You're coming over?
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Do you want to talk about the style since we're here?
Oh yes. If you come across a stile that's damaged, and quite often stiles might be damaged by sheep and cattle rubbing against them, or even horses
They eat
nibbling
it,
at them,
yeah.
then the thing to do is to report them to your local highway authority. We're in the Peak District National Park here, so we'd probably report the damage to the Peak Park. But the other thing is you could report it to your local ramblers group because they're really active, aren't they? And
They're
very
really good at following it up,
Yeah.
aren't they?
The other
Yeah.
thing I'd like to say is the stiles on this walk that we're doing, they're all in very good condition.
There are lots of highlights that enrich one's life. People you meet on life's journey is one of them, and another is a delightful tea shop. And I know it sounds very British, but there's nothing quite like a lovely cup of tea and a piece of cake to make you feel happy with the world, whatever the weather. And today we found this wonderful tea shop.
So where have you been walking today then?
Limestone Way.
All right, is that a circular walk then or a one-wayer?
No, we do a circular walk, but
Right.
we just do short walks.
Yeah. So you've parked the car somewhere, have you, and you're walking
Yes,
back to it?
Yes, about 2 miles away.
So do you
Yeah.
plan them?
No, Keith
No,
does
I
that.
plan that.
Oh, right.
How many miles a day do you walk? What do you plan? What sort of
Well,
length?
we usually try around average 8 to 10 miles a day. Sometimes we go a little longer, but it's usually about the 7 or 8 miles.
That's just perfect, really, I think, isn't it?
But I enjoy planning it too, especially with a glass of wine, of course.
So have you planned it the night before, have you?
Yes.
And they're not always circular after a few
Very,
glasses of
no,
wine?
not at all.
Figure of eight.
Yes, can be.
And why do you go walking?
Well, apart from the fresh air and the exercise and the views, the fantastic views,
Yes.
the wildlife, of course, we enjoy. And I think really, I usually like to plan, say, a night or two before, and I've always found up to now that a little bit of planning will always give you some historical interest or interesting stories about the places that you visit. It's really great.
And also, I think the health benefits are really good from walking, aren't they? It
Tremendous.
keeps you going,
Yes,
doesn't
it
it?
does.
Sure does,
I
yeah.
think it's,
Hello.
Well,
yeah.
we're just walking through here and we're fascinated by all the walls around here, and it's lovely to meet somebody who's actually rebuilding one of the stone walls. They're just beautiful, aren't they?
Yes, I've had a go at gritstone. Well, it's hard work, that's all I remember about it. Gritstone walling.
It's slightly easier than the limestone. You can find all kinds of shapes with the limestone.
So looking at this wall, have you actually rebuilt it from the very base? Have you dug down under the ground? Because I'm never sure how they're constructed.
Yes, this started from the ground. Yes, it had completely fallen down. It had been hit by a tractor on the way in.
So how far under the ground is it before we actually...
The wall will go down possibly 8-9 inches. I've built this off the solid base because the stone is very close to the surface here. There's not a lot of worry with the footings.
Right. I always wonder when you're taking down dry stone walls, you find anything left from the previous generation. Probably.
Oh, like coins, you mean?
Yeah, I've never found
Treasure.
anything there.
Yes,
yeah.
I found coins.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I found flints, old coins, pot eggs.
What's that? Those eggs that you put on the chickens?
That's
what it
right,
is?
yes.
Why are they in walls?
I have no idea.
Funny thing to find.
But I
isn't
found
it?
more than one, yes.
Have you?
Yes.
I've noticed there's a lot of fossils in this wall. Have you found anything interesting here?
Yes. There's corals. There's a nice coral I found
Oh, that's
earlier.
nice. Cross-section
Beautiful.
through a coral.
It's like a leaf, isn't it?
It is, yes.
What else have you found here?
There's a lot of brachiopods just around here, large ones.
Brachiopods.
Yes.
What's that? A fish, is it?
No, it's a shell.
Oh, it's a shell.
And I
Yes.
think you get the largest brachiopods in the whole world from this area.
Yes, and that's one of them. Yes.
So that bit's the shell, is it?
It is, yes. Yes. But you can find them, this sort of size.
Anything else interesting that you find around
Yes,
here?
well, I study the trilobites.
Oh, right.
Pygidium or tail of one there.
That's amazing. It's so beautiful. Just look at that, Ian. Look.
And what was it again? Hygidium?
Pygidium.
Pygidium.
That means it's the bottom end, the rear end.
Oh,
of it.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are quite late on.
Yes,
When
these
did
are
they
towards
become-
the end of the trilobites. Yes.
Right. Is there plenty of work for wallers around here?
There's quite a bit. There's plenty of walls. There's an awful, endless amount of walls.
Yes.
It's whether most people can afford to have them done.
You got to finish this bit today, have
I
you?
have, yes.
Okay.
This I need to get this one up tonight.
Oh, lovely. Well,
Okay.
nice to meet you,
Well,
and thank you very much for your time.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Thank
Take care.
you.
then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
I don't think he'll run out of walls to mend for a long time. Our route takes us through narrow fields lined with limestone walls rich in fossils. It's a historic path, and it's almost a direct line between the two old settlements of Flag and Chelmorton. I try to imagine the feet that have walked this way over the ages, and what their lives were like, and what stories they could tell.
This is the Illy Willy water, which comes from the Illy Willy well. It's a spring that comes out of the limestone here. Now, I put it into the internet to see what came up, and nobody was more surprised than me when it came up as the village of Chelmorton, where we are. So it only rises a short distance. It's a spring, and it just comes out of the rocks here. And where does it go to, Juliet?
It disappears down a grid right in front of you.
So it's a very short-lived little river.
Changes in agricultural practices from the 16th century onwards led to the disappearance of the open system, and increased prosperity changed the medieval village beyond all recognition, except at Chelmorton, where the land was considered of such poor quality that enclosure was not considered worthwhile, and so this wonderful field pattern has remained completely untouched.
Looking at the contours on the map, it's really obvious to see a deep valley marked, but when you stand on the edge of it, it really does become impressive. The Valley of Deepdale can take you by surprise, and it's quite unexpected when walking across the fields. It's also a site of special scientific interest, and it's especially important for its wildflowers.
is it Martha?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I'm Juliet. Pleased to meet you.
Hi, I'm Ian. How are you?
Thanks very much for coming out today to show us the cave in Deepdale.
No problem.
Well-
It'd be good to have a look at it.
Yeah, whereabouts is it exactly?
We just need to go down here, follow this path down. It's just round the corner.
Okay,
Great.
lead on then. Go, 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 go. Brilliant. It's cold this morning, isn't it?
Wow, this is quite awesome. So when do you think people first lived here?
Probably about 10,000 years ago was the first occupation of these sort of caves.
Right, so that was at the time when the last ice age finished.
All right, was that all over Britain, was it, the Ice Age?
No, it wasn't. It got down as far as Shropshire, the last one, so the south of Britain was out of the ice. So what sort of people were living here, do you think?
Well, these are the people that we call the Stone Age people. So from
Yeah.
about 10,000 years ago, probably up until about 5,000 years ago, people would have lived in caves quite regularly, until they started farming, basically. They were what we call the hunters and gatherers, so they were going out hunting different animals like bison and red deer and wild horses, and then later on smaller animals like beavers and wild boar, things like that. And also obviously gathering things like the berries and nuts and all sorts of things like that.
Do you think they lived here permanently, or did they just use it occasionally?
It depends. I think some caves we've got evidence of them just living here seasonally. We can tell that from the animal bones that you find. It might be just ones that you find in the summer. But some caves they probably did live here all year round.
So they had a fire, did they, in here, do you think?
Yes, definitely.
Where would they have the fire?
I think probably further inside the cave to keep it out from the rain, really.
Really? But it must be really, really, I don't know, lovely feeling if you had a fire. Can you imagine it? No, I can.
I think you'd be really dirty. You'd be covered in soot all the time, wouldn't you?
I think so, but I think it's difficult for us to imagine what it would be like in our modern houses,
Yes.
where you shut the front door and you're nice and warm.
And
But
clean.
to have such an enormous front door like this cave door, but you
Yeah.
would have been inside, you would have had animal furs to keep you warmer,
Yeah.
and they probably wouldn't have lurked around the front of the cave very much. They would have been inside, closer to the fire, and further back.
This must have been really one of the semi-detached properties, I think. It's lovely, isn't it, with a massive front door, being really prestigious.
So you fancy moving in there?
Yeah, let's go and have a look. Go on.
Martha, I went to the Dordogne last summer and saw lots of cave paintings down there. Do you think there's any here?
Well, they've not found any in the caves over here, but they've certainly found some cave art in the Creswell Crags caves, which are the other side of Derbyshire.
All right.
And as far as I know, that's probably the only evidence of cave art in Britain.
But there could be something in here.
There could be some still waiting to be discovered.
Were the Romans, did they use these caves? Is there any evidence of that as well?
Yes, I mean, not so much to live in, but there's lots of evidence that they used them as workshops, particularly to make bronze, as bronze
Really?
making workshops. Certainly in this cave and in other caves, they found lots of things like bronze jewellery, bronze rings, and different things that would been used in the jewellery making process.
So what sort of artefacts were found in the caves of Derbyshire?
Well, starting from when they were first used, sort of 10,000 years ago, we've got lots of animal bones that tells us the kind of animals they were hunting. We've got flints, and then moving on later on to maybe about 5,000 years ago, you start to get some evidence of pottery and the different animal bones. And then in Roman times, a lot of bronze artefacts, so bronze brooches, pins, even one of those Roman vanity sets where you've got an ear scoop, some tweezers.
Ear scoop, that's nice.
Yes.
And where are they now? I want to go and have a look.
They're all kept in Buxton Museum, and a lot of them are on display.
And the only thing I read about it on the internet, it's absolutely free to get in.
It is.
Good. So
Look forward to it.
Let's go after we finish the walk.
We will, yeah.
All right then, I'll
See you there. And we've come here to meet Saul Burton, who's a bushcraft enthusiast, and he's going to tell us about how ancient man lived in Deepdale Cave. Hi Saul, how are you?
Hi, guys, you alright?
Not so
Hi,
bad.
it's lovely to see you again.
Likewise, you alright?
Yeah, not bad. We've just found a very exciting place. We're very, very excited about it, aren't we, Ian?
We are. We've just been to Deepdale, and ancient man lived there. We wanted to know, hoping you can tell us, how they lit fire and how important fire must have been to them.
I certainly can, yes, yeah. The earliest recorded controlled use of fire in this country dates back 400,000 years. That's at a site called Beech's Pit in Suffolk. Now, 400,000 years is a very, very long time ago. That's pre-Neanderthal.
Yeah.
So by the time the caves around here were inhabited, fire was very much a part of everyday life. They would have used it not only for the obvious reasons, for warmth and for cooking, but for lots of other reasons that many people today, wouldn't think of. Quite sophisticated ways. One of the most important factors from their point of view was the preservation of food. They would use fire and the smoke generated by the fire for preserving meats, so they could dry and smoke meat and fish. Now the technology was fairly limited for them in those days. They would have been able to use iron pyrites and a piece of flint to struck together to make a spark. It is tricky, and it's also kind of geologically specific. You don't find them all over the country. The most widespread method would have been fire by friction. The old adage of rubbing two sticks together. That's often the first thing that comes to mind.
You've got some sticks there. What are they?
I have. This is a bow drill, and given the likely climate of the area, this would have been the most reliable friction fire lighting method. This involves drilling one piece of wood into the other at 90 degrees.
What sort of wood is it?
To the grain. That is a piece of ivy.
It's really light, isn't it?
It is.
And that's a piece of willow.
It feels very dry as well.
It is. You need to choose your wood very carefully. Hanging or standing dead wood is best because it's off the ground.
What sorts? Anything?
Sycamore, willow.
Lovely.
Ivy is about the best. So you drill the drill into the hearth, and the friction tears up the wood fibres, which forms a fine powder. The powder falls into the notch and is collected there, and the friction also builds up heat, and the heat builds to the point where it reaches the ignition temperature for the powder, and the powder then starts to smoulder and it forms an ember, and you can then tip the ember into a tinder bundle and blow it into flame.
Well, let's see the real thing. Can you
Okay,
demonstrate for us?
I can, yes.
Good.
I suppose fire must have been one of the earliest discoveries of man. It's such a basic human instinct. Just sitting by a fire, it can warm your spirit as well as your body.
Look, some lesser celandine.
Yeah, we've seen better stands of it, haven't we?
Yes, we certainly have.
Yeah. It was Wordsworth's favourite plant, of course. Well, it's got another name, common name.
I think it's called stinking foxes because sometimes it doesn't smell very nice.
Yeah, it was his favourite plant, so that he had it carved on his gravestone, but unfortunately they carved greater celandine instead of lesser celandine on his grave. There's a useless fact for you there, Jen.
Do you know the poem then?
I've seen thee high and low, 'twas years of more, and yet 'twas a face I did not know.
We must be nearly at the end of the walk now.
I can feel it on my legs.
Yes, I can. I'm a bit tired.
What was the best bit then?
Well, I thought it was all gorgeous. I loved the whole walk. But the best bit, I think, for me, was the roaches. I just loved that wild, windswept ridge with the great views.
The worst bit definitely was the moors, that bleak snow
It was
blizzard.
so cold, wasn't it?
And the Mermaid was a bit of a climb, wasn't it, going up to that Mermaid?
Yeah, that was a bit of a slog. But look, there's Buxton
Oh,
ahead.
there we are, ta-da!
We're nearly there.
There's a dome there, isn't it? In the...
Yeah, what
in the
else can you make
centre.
out? And that big hotel to the right of it. Well, we've had the most wonderful walk and we're back in Buxton where we started.
And I've got a bit of a treat for you, and I've come ready dressed for the occasion.
Oh, well, and so have I.
Shall we go?
Let's go.